Stratocaster kit guitar build. I bought this kit on kookaburramusictree.com for $165 Australian. I chose this kit because it comes with cutouts for humbucker pickups if you choose to add them later. This is the box it came in. It was pretty well packaged. So the body of the guitar was pretty rough and I needed to do a fair bit of sanding to get it as smooth as I wanted before I painted it, and the neck was pretty good. It didn't really need any sanding at all. This is what you get with the kit.
You were my Trojan horse, your battered skin and heavy smile begged horror stories. I swore I would amend, and when you picked at the sutures, I blame my feeble hand. Still tried to graft my skin. I didn't understand. You look so goddamn different than your endoskeleton.
The pickguard comes pre-assembled with the pickups, the tone knobs and the volume knob already pre-wired. All you need to do is connect the ground wire and connect the plug to the input jack. The kit even came with a free clip-on guitar tuner. I started by sanding the body of the guitar. You want to start with something a little bit rougher and then start going to finer grit sandpaper as you go. I started sanding the frets of the guitar. They were a little bit sharp on the edges. You want to get them as smooth as possible so it's comfortable when you play. So I checked the neck to see if it was level. It was a little bit out, so I adjusted that. I then used the permanent marker to draw across the top of the frets. After you've done that, use the level and a bit of sandpaper to sand the frets to make sure they're level. You'll know they're level when there's no permanent marker showing on the top of the frets.
Through your skin, why oh why? You did this all yourself. You did it to yourself.
The next step was to put the tuning machines on. You start by using a Phillips head screwdriver to put the Phillips head screw into the back of the tuning machine, into the back of the neck. Then just use a shifter or a socket to put the nut on the front of the tuning machine. Then just repeat the same steps for all 6.
Watch drops of color rush back. You called it cactuses, but it just caused more damage over time. Every time,
Then I use just a regular lead pencil to draw on the front of the nut. This just lubricates the nut and allows the strings to flow a little bit more cleanly through. Then I just use some regular PVA wood glue to glue the nut onto the neck, just using 2 little dabs of glue. Then I began spraying the body of the guitar with some primer. I did a fair few coats of primer and I wet sanded in between coats just to make sure the surface was as smooth as possible for the top coat. Then I started applying the top coat. The colour that I chose was a seafoam green. I did quite a few coats of this as well and did the same wet sanding in between the coats to make sure it was smooth. I then applied a few coats of clear coat on top of that to give it a shiny finish. The next step was to put the bridge on the guitar. There's just 6 screws that need to be screwed into the front of the guitar. I then fed the ground wire for the pickguard through to the back of the guitar. Then I connected the plug to the input jack. Then I used the screwdriver to put the Phillips head screws around the outside of the pickguard. The next step is to connect the claw to the back of the guitar and then connect the ground wire. This kit doesn't require you to solder the ground wire to the claw, but it's probably a good idea. And then you want to connect the springs to the back of the claw. The easiest way to do this is to leave the claw fairly loose, put the springs in, and then tighten up the screws for the claw. If they're too tight, you won't be able to get the springs on. At this point, I was ready to connect the neck to the body of the guitar. I put the backing plate on the back of the body and found that the holes didn't line up. These holes were pre-drilled prior to receiving the kit. So to add some stability, I chose to glue the neck to the guitar body. Then I just used a screwdriver to screw the last 4 screws into the guitar neck. This is the end product. I made a few small mistakes with the painting process, but it turned out fairly well. In my next video I'll do a guitar cover with this guitar so you can hear how it sounds.
You look so